2 years ago, my life was falling apart. My partner of 8 years had left me, I'd lost my job due to company downsizing, and I was struggling to make ends meet while living in an overpriced apartment. The anxiety and depression I'd managed to keep at bay for years came crashing back like a tidal wave. I could barely get out of bed most days, let alone deal with the mounting bills and responsibilities. That's when everything got exponentially worse. I was checking my email one morning when I noticed a confirmation for an iPhone purchase I never made. At first, I thought it was just spam, but then I saw another email for a MacBook Pro purchase. My heart started racing as I logged into my accounts. There they were, thousands of dollars in charges I hadn't made. I immediately called my bank. I explained to them that I was seeing fraudulent charges on my account and needed to report identity theft. The bank representative asked me to verify the last 4 digits of my social security number, which I provided. After checking my account, they mentioned seeing several large purchases in the last 24 hours and asked if I had lost my card recently. I told them I still had my card with me and that someone must have stolen my identity. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I discovered new credit cards opened in my name, bank accounts I never created, and even a car rental agreement I knew nothing about. Each day brought a new horror. I went to the police station to file a report. When I explained to the officer that someone had stolen my identity, they asked me to elaborate. I told them about the multiple accounts that had been opened and the thousands in purchases made. The officer's response was discouraging. They said they could take a report, but there wasn't much they could do since these cases were hard to trace. Even when I pointed out that they had rented and stolen a car in my name, the officer simply repeated that they would file the report but told me not to get my hopes up. I left the station feeling more hopeless than ever. The rental car company was threatening legal action, my credit score was plummeting, and my mental health was at rock bottom. I spent countless hours on the phone with credit bureaus, banks, and fraud departments. Every time I closed one account, another would pop up. Then came the day I visited the last bank where the thief had opened an account. It was a small local branch I'd never used before. The bank manager asked if I wanted to close the account. When I confirmed this and explained it was opened fraudulently using my identity, they told me there was $800 in the account that needed to be withdrawn before they could close it. I tried to explain that it wasn't my money and that the person who stole my identity had put it there. The manager simply said that according to their records, I had opened the account and the money belonged to the account holder, which was me. When I asked for clarification about having to take the money, they explained that they couldn't close an account with funds still in it, and I would need to withdraw the money first. I sat there staring at the bank manager as the reality of the situation sank in. After months of dealing with this nightmare, watching my credit score tank, spending countless hours fixing the mess, and living with constant anxiety, the universe was finally throwing me a bone. I agreed to withdraw the money. The bank manager printed out the withdrawal slip and asked me to sign it. The identity thief had cost me thousands in fraudulent charges, countless hours of stress, and nearly pushed me over the edge mentally. Taking this $800 felt like cosmic justice. I later learned through the police investigation that the thief had been running a sophisticated scam operation targeting multiple victims. They'd use stolen identities to make large purchases, then resell the items for cash. That $800 was probably just a small fraction of what they'd stolen from others. I used that money to pay for a few sessions with a therapist, which helped me start rebuilding my mental health. I also invested in a comprehensive identity protection service and started the long process of rebuilding my credit score. The rental car company eventually dropped their case after I provided proof of the identity theft, and most of the fraudulent charges were eventually reversed. But I'll never forget the overwhelming feeling of violation and helplessness during those months of dealing with the theft. At least I got a small victory in the end, and it was completely legal according to the bank's own rules. I was always a stubborn kid, especially when I knew I was right. Growing up in a government engineers colony, where my dad worked at the thermal power plant, taught me early on that you had to stand up for yourself. The colony provided 7 buses to transport all the kids to different schools in the area. My all-boys school got two buses since we had the most students, but even then, many of us had to stand for the entire 15-kilometer journey. At 12 years old, I wasn't particularly tall or strong, but I was quick on my feet and had mastered the art of getting good seats by being first on the bus. Living in a state where summer temperatures hit 50 degrees Celsius, a window seat wasn't just a luxury, it was survival. The incident happened on the last day of term. Everyone was excited about the upcoming vacation, and I had just aced my final exam. I sprinted across the school field, probably around 500 meters, to be first on the bus. The victory was sweet. Front window seat, all mine. I settled in, enjoying the breeze as we drove to our next stop. That's where she got on. The entitled daughter who attended a different school with her mother, who was a teacher there. They were the only two people from their school who used our buses since they didn't have their own designated transport. I'd seen them before but never had any direct interaction. That was about to change. The daughter spotted me and immediately ordered me to get up. When I asked her why, she just repeated her demand more forcefully. I simply refused. Her mother, hearing the commotion, stepped onto the bus and demanded to know why I was still sitting after her daughter had told me to move. I explained that it was my seat and that I had run across an entire field to get it, suggesting they ask someone else instead. Of course, they wouldn't dare ask any of the older boys in the back for their seats. The 12th standard students were much more intimidating than a small kid like me. They thought I'd be an easy target. The mother then tried to intimidate me by asking for my father's name. I challenged her, asking if she wanted to complain and stating that I wouldn't move regardless. That's when things got physical. The entitled mom grabbed my arm and tried to yank me out of the seat. What she didn't expect was my response. I had an effective defense mechanism that I developed over years of dealing with bullies. I pinched her palm hard, right in the fleshy part that really hurts. She let go immediately, looking at me like I'd committed some terrible crime. The rest of the bus ride was tense. The entitled mom kept shooting me death glares while whispering to her daughter. I could hear them planning to report me to everyone they could think of. True to their word, they launched a full-scale complaint campaign. They went to my dad, the entitled mom's husband, who was also a power plant employee, my school principal, and the bus committee. They painted me as this violent, unruly child who had assaulted an adult. What they hadn't counted on was the support I'd get from the other students, especially the 12th standard boys. When the bus committee investigated, multiple seniors came forward to testify. They described how the entitled mom and daughter regularly tried to bully younger students out of their seats, how they'd seen the mom grab my arm first, and how I had only defended myself. The bus committee's decision was swift and satisfying. Not only did they rule in my favor, but they also banned both the entitled mom and daughter from using either of our school buses permanently. They had to arrange their own transportation from then on. The entitled mom tried to appeal the decision, claiming they had no other way to get to school. The committee head's response was perfect, pointing out that she had chosen to teach at a different school, knowing transportation wasn't provided. He emphasized that their buses were for their school students only, and her attempt to physically remove a child from his seat had demonstrated that she couldn't be trusted with their students' safety. After that, I never saw them on our buses again. The entitled mom had to start driving her daughter to school every day, which I heard wasn't cheap given the fuel prices. Every time I saw them around the colony, they would quickly walk the other way. After graduating with my biology degree and finding the job market completely saturated in my area, I had to make ends meet somehow. 4 days a week, 6 hours a day, I stand at my register scanning items and making small talk with customers. It's monotonous work, but mostly peaceful. Well, except for that one incident a couple weeks ago. It was an unusually busy day, the kind where you barely have time to breathe between customers. I'd been going non-stop for 2 hours when I finally got a brief 5-minute break in the rush. That's when she appeared. This middle-aged woman with perfectly styled hair and fancy clothes that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. I greeted her with my usual welcome and asked about her bag preference. She just grunted in response and started unloading her cart. It was mostly produce, lots of organic vegetables and fancy fruits. I'd rather scan those any day over some of the weird things customers bring through my line. Everything was going fine until I reached for the grapes. That's when I saw it, a huge brown spider nestled right in the middle of the bag. Now, I need to explain something about me and spiders. When I was 8, during a family bike ride through a nature trail, a spider bit me. My parents initially dismissed it as a mosquito bite, but over the next few days, my arm swelled up into a hard lump the size of a softball. I still remember the panic in my mom's voice when she finally noticed how bad it had gotten and rushed me to the emergency room. Ever since then, spiders have been my absolute worst fear. I can handle any other bug, but spiders, they completely paralyze me. So when I saw that 8-legged monster in the grapes, I couldn't help letting out a strangled yelp and jumping back from the register. Thankfully, my bagger, this sweet high school kid, noticed my reaction and immediately came around to help. I apologized and explained about the spider in the grapes, asking if he could remove it. The bagger kindly agreed and offered to get a fresh bag for the customer. As soon as he walked away, the woman's entire demeanor changed. She started mocking me about freaking out over just a spider. When I tried to explain my phobia, she cut me off, ridiculing me for needing a teenage boy to rescue me from what she called an itsy-bitsy spider. I tried to explain that I understood it might seem silly, but she wouldn't let me finish. She kept berating me, calling me pathetic, and telling me to just get over it, insisting the spider was barely the size of a pea. I could only stand there trying to maintain my professional smile while she continued her tirade, bragging about how she had carried the bag all the way through the store, despite being scared of spiders herself, and how I should have just dealt with it for 5 seconds. The moment the bagger returned with fresh grapes, her personality completely changed. She switched to a sweet voice and praised him for being such a nice young man. That's when I decided enough was enough. In our store, we have 2 ways to ring up items, by count or by weight. Grapes are priced by weight at $3.99 per pound. When I placed the new bag on the scale, I may have accidentally rested my thumb on the edge. Somehow those 2 pounds and 7 ounces of grapes mysteriously became 4 pounds and 2 ounces. She had such a massive order that the extra pound and a half didn't stand out in her total. She paid without even looking at the receipt and left with her nose in the air, probably feeling very pleased with herself for putting the pathetic cashier in her place. After she left, I made sure to thank my bagger properly and even bought him a soda from the break room vending machine. It wasn't about him getting praise, he deserved it. It was about her two-faced behavior and cruel mockery. The next week I saw her again in the store. She made a point of going to a different register, but I couldn't help noticing she was meticulously checking every bag of produce she picked up. Guess who's developed a new fear of grocery store spiders? That spider-infested grape bag. It got sent to our produce department as evidence of a quality control issue, and our store ended up getting a significant discount from that supplier. So in the end, Karen's mockery cost her money and saved the store some. I've been working in retail for over 8 years now, starting as a cashier and working my way up to shift supervisor at a major drugstore chain. After dealing with countless shoplifters, you develop a sixth sense for suspicious behavior. Sometimes company policy ties our hands when it comes to confronting them directly, but that doesn't mean we can't get creative within the rules. This morning started like any other. I was organizing the daily tasks when one of my employees approached me with concerning news. She explained that she had let a young boy into the men's bathroom and heard paper ripping sounds. Upon checking afterward, she discovered an empty Pokemon card box inside. She showed me the torn packaging, and I immediately spotted the kid. Couldn't have been more than 10 years old, standing with his mom in the pharmacy area. Now, normally we have strict procedures about confronting shoplifters, and in this case, we didn't have enough evidence according to company policy. But I had a better idea. I told my employee to try something different, instructing her to take the empty box and ask them if they needed help finding anything. My employee walked over to them, box in hand. She greeted them with the usual customer service pleasantries, asking if they needed assistance. The kid's reaction was immediate and telling. He practically jumped out of his skin. He stammered out a rushed response, insisting they were fine and didn't need anything. His voice was shaking so bad, you'd think he'd seen a ghost. That's when I noticed his mom was on her phone with what sounded like an insurance company. Anyone who works in pharmacy knows that means they'll be here for a while. I grabbed our security announcement remote and the empty Pokemon card box. Part of my morning duties included doing inventory counts throughout the store, so I had the perfect excuse to keep walking past them. Every time I passed by, I'd make sure to fiddle with the box, sometimes spinning it on my finger, always keeping it visible. I'd wait until I was right next to them before pressing the security announcement button. Each time the message played, the kid would freeze up like a deer in headlights. After about an hour, the boy started whining to his mom about being bored and repeatedly asking when they could leave. His mom, still preoccupied with her phone call, handed him some money and told him to buy himself some snacks while she sorted things out. I quickly went to our front cashier and handed them a Pokemon toy to place on the counter. When the boy came to check out, the cashier casually picked up the toy and asked if it belonged to him. The boy managed only a shaky negative response. According to my cashier, the kid turned ghost white at just hearing the word Pokemon. He practically ran back to his mom, snacks in hand. He kept pleading with her to leave, but she told him to sit down and eat his snacks while she finished her call. The kid spent the next hour trying to make himself invisible whenever I walked by. He'd duck behind shelves, pretend to be deeply interested in reading labels, anything to avoid eye contact. Finally, after 2 hours, his mom's prescription issue was resolved. The boy practically sprinted to the exit, while his mom took her time gathering her things and checking her receipt. When she questioned his rush, he mumbled something about wanting to go home. Just as they were about to leave, I made one final pass by them with the empty box. The boy's mom noticed it and asked what I was holding. I casually explained it was an empty Pokemon card package found in the men's bathroom earlier, adding that someone must have stolen the cards. The mom looked at her son and I saw her grab his arm and march him back into the store. In a stern voice, she demanded he empty his pockets. The cards came tumbling out. I've never seen a mom so angry, or a kid so ashamed. She made him apologize to every employee in the store, paid for the cards, and I overheard her grounding him for a month.